This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Bibi takes the mic. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today defended his country's war on terror in a fiery speech before the UN General Assembly. The head of state vowed to finish the job in eradicating Hamas from the Palestinian territory.
The final remnants of Hamas are holed up in Gaza City. They vow to repeat the atrocities of October 7th again and again and again. That is why Israel must finish the job. That is why we want to do so as fast as possible.
Netanyahu's speech in Lower Manhattan was broadcast live on loudspeakers in Gaza.
Lay down your arms. Let my people go. Free the hostages. All of them, the whole 48, free the hostages now.
The Jewish leader said to the hostages, and we're quoting here, "We have not forgotten you." He also blasted UN members who support Palestinian statehood.
There's a familiar saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Well, for many countries here, when the going got tough, you caved.
Dozens of UN delegates walked out of the speech in protest of how Israel's waging war in Gaza. Netanyahu meets on Monday with President Trump at the White House. While departing the White House today, the president told reporters there is a deal to end the war and bring home the hostages. A grand jury says there's enough evidence to proceed with a trial against James Comey, the former director of the FBI. He's been charged with making false statements and obstructing justice. It has to do with testimony he gave Congress 5 years ago about the Trump-Russia collusion hoax.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump.
Comey took to Instagram last night to proclaim his innocence.
My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial and keep the faith.
Attorney General Pam Bondi says the two-count indictment shows nobody is above the law. Constitutional law scholar Jonathan Turley.
This is a very direct and focused indictment, and somebody is lying.
Former FBI profiler James Fitzgerald says getting a guilty verdict will not be easy.
This guy played loosey-goosey most of his career as an FBI director. He really knows how to work the media and knows what to do and get people for him.
Comey's been on the radar of President Trump for several years. He was FBI director when Trump first came into power in 2017, but was fired from his job just 3 months later. Former FBI Special Agent James Gagliano.
Many of the things that James Comey did were wrong. There's a number of people that look at James Comey as the epitome of moral rectitude. And now a humiliating indictment.
Comey's arraignment set for 10 o'clock on October 9th in Alexandria, Virginia. The man who shot up an ICE facility in Dallas this week used an ICE tracking app to learn the whereabouts of ICE agents. He also left notes indicating his hatred for federal immigration officials. Nancy Larson is the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Texas.
He wrote that he intended to maximize lethality against ICE personnel. He hoped his actions would terrorize ICE employees and interfere with their work, which he called human trafficking. And this, what he did, is the very definition of terrorism.
In the days leading up to the attack, the gunman searched for the Charlie Kirk assassination video multiple times and downloaded information about DHS facilities. Marcus Charles is the director of ICE enforcement and removal operations.
Anyone who creates or distributes these apps that is designed to spot, track, and locate ICE officers are well aware of the dangers that they are exposing to law enforcement. It's a casting call to invite bad actors to attack law enforcement officers. It's no different than giving a hitman the location of their intended target, and this is exactly what we saw happen in Dallas.
The shooter spent months planning the attack that was meant to kill ICE agents. He instead murdered a migrant and injured 2 others in the sniper-style attack before committing suicide. Vice President J.D. Vance is sounding off on Jimmy Kimmel's return to late-night television. The liberal comedian served a short suspension for making controversial comments about the Kirk assassination.
I'd love for Jimmy Kimmel to apologize to Erica and to all of the people that he slandered. He tries to say that he told a joke. He didn't tell a joke. He was actually accusing conservative America of killing Charlie Kirk. We now know that is false. Charlie Kirk was murdered by a left-wing assassin who was radicalized by some of the rhetoric that we see coming from the far left.
The VP says political violence will not stop until the left gets real about its rhetoric.
When you accuse the people who've been holding prayer vigils, who've been praying about Charlie Kirk, you accuse them of killing Charlie Kirk, you're actually apologizing for his murder. You're encouraging more of that violence to happen. If we're going to stop this crazy strain of left-wing violence, we have to be honest about what it is. And the honest truth is that Charlie Kirk was not killed by a MAGA American. He was not killed by a Republican. He was killed by a left-wing radical. Let's be honest about that fact so that we can stop it from happening.
Vance interviewed on the Laura Ingraham program. The White House is threatening to fire government employees, not furlough them, fire them. If there's a government shutdown next week, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says Democrats will agree to keep Uncle Sam in business if Republicans agree to extend the Obamacare tax credits. President Trump says no deal. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has ordered hundreds of military generals and admirals to Quantico, Virginia next Tuesday for a big meeting of the minds.
So a meeting of this size in person and on such short notice is extremely rare, if not unprecedented. We should also note that Hegseth has ordered a 20% reduction in 4-star officers, and he's already fired more than a dozen military leaders. Hegseth may use the meeting to outline future reductions.
Charlie D'Agata at the White House. Health Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. has ordered a review of the abortion pill mifepristone, which is used in 2/3 of all abortions. Pro-life activists point to studies that show 1 in 10 women who take mifepristone have suffered serious side effects. Still to come on the Noon Report, a Friday edition. Payroll problems in Rochester, flash flooding in Scranton, and was it a cover-up in Buffalo?
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. The weekend is about upon us, and overall it shapes up well weather-wise. Forecast details are straight ahead. We'll see you in 10.
All right, see you then. Thank you, Kevin. A great debate is raging in this country on the reach of free speech following the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The high-profile murders triggered a firestorm of comments on social media, ranging from prayers for his family to celebration of his death. The Kirk killing has cost people their jobs and led to suspensions at school. These students at Syracuse University offered their thoughts to Spectrum News.
I think people should have the right to post what they want to post. I think that suspending somebody because they're posting about Charlie Kirk, I think that's further dividing us in terms of politics.
Free speech is obviously something Charlie Kirk himself believed in, right? So I don't think it's fair to suspend or chastise students for any reason about speaking about what they believe.
Everybody should be able to say what they want and be able to live their life freely. But if it goes towards a negative passion or towards a certain person, I think there's a cutoff where you can only say so much.
You can only say so much. New York Senate Minority Leader Rob Ortt says there needs to be discussions as well about accountability on college campuses, especially among faculty.
Look, we've also seen schools, though, where you've had teachers, professors who've engaged in incendiary dialogue as professors of that institution. And I think that what you're seeing now is, look, you don't get to just say that and go, I'm on a college campus, so I'm protected. There still could be repercussions.
Recently, a Naples, New York high school physics teacher had to resign after pressure from the community for posting derogatory comments about Charlie Kirk. Flash flooding caused drainage issues last night in Scranton, Pennsylvania. For residents like Kevin Browning, this is an all too common occurrence. He wound up with 18 inches of water in the basement of his home.
This is an ongoing problem. Now we're getting the buck passed. The water company's saying it's the city's problem. The city's saying it's the water company's problem. It's always been the sewer authority's problem, because every time we had a problem, the sewer authority was out there cleaning the drains out.
Browning, who's called Scranton home for 44 years, says just a month ago he got a foot of rain in his basement, and it's happened again. Thursday's downpour trapped a motorist in an SUV on Olive Street. Officials stress you should never try to drive over a water-covered road. Democrats on the Erie County, New York legislature want a state attorney general investigation into a hit-and-run last year involving a Buffalo cop. In April of 2024, Deputy D.J. Granville damaged 7 vehicles on the city's west side while driving under the influence of drugs. That accident caused $60,000 in damage.
We needed an investigation, not just of the events of that night, but of the attempts to cover it up.
Erie County Democrat Dr. Kevin Hardwick.
This thing has been characterized in some quarters as a bad night by one individual in the sheriff's office. I think it's anything but. I think this is really a bad year and a half by a lot of people in law enforcement. And I think it's eroded trust in law enforcement, and I think we need to get to the bottom of it.
The sheriff deputy was suspended without pay and sentenced to 50 hours of community service. He's expected back on the job on Monday. The U.S. Justice Department is suing the state of Pennsylvania for failing to provide requested voter registration information. That suit claims the Commonwealth violated the Help America Vote Act. The DOJ wants information like names, birth dates, and social security numbers. Pennsylvania Secretary of State Al Schmidt says the Justice Department's demands are unprecedented and unlawful. He says the state will fight this in court. Payroll problems persist in the Rochester, New York school district, the state's third largest school district. Here's 13 Wham's Daniel Finkelstein.
Since last Friday, around 235 staff members reported incorrect pay, with roughly 46 not being paid at all. Union leaders say hundreds are still dealing with payroll issues as a result of the glitch with the new payroll system, Oracle.
Teachers in the Rochester School District took to the streets Thursday in protest of that new payroll system. Sports is next. We call it the 2-minute drill right here on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, there are only 3 games left in the regular season of Major League Baseball, and there is still much to be decided. In Chicago, the Mets held off the Cubs 8-5, partly on the strength of the long ball. Brett Beatty hit a 3-run shot. Francisco Lindor also found the stands for his 30th home run of the season. With the win, New York remains 1 game ahead of the Reds and 2 up on the D-backs for that final wildcard spot. Cincy won and Arizona lost their games. The Mets have to finish at least a game ahead of both of those teams, because if they finish with a tied record, New York loses the tiebreaker. In the American League, the Yankees and Blue Jays remain tied for the top spot in the East. The Yanks completed a sweep of the White Sox 5-3. Giancarlo Stanton, the big blow, a bases-clearing double in the 5th. The Blue Jays were 6-1 winners over Boston. Dalton Varsho hit a granny for Toronto. Now, the Yankees have to finish at least a game better than the Blue Jays because Toronto holds the tiebreaker. The other close race is in the American League Central and the wild card spot. Detroit beat Cleveland 4-2 to pull within a game of the Central lead and to remain a game ahead of the Houston Astros for the final wild card spot, because the Stros defeated the Athletics 11-5. Dodgers, National League West champs after shutting out Arizona 8-zip. The Thursday night football game saw the Seahawks win it on a game-ending 52-yard field goal, 23-20 Seattle over Arizona. And the Ryder Cup got underway today in New York City. It's golf's biggest event as the United States takes on Europe. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy, have yourself a wonderful weekend. And still to come on the Noon Report, the Kirk effect at church, the net effect of one-party rule in Albany, and has the transgender movement run its course? We'll discuss these issues on Capital Connection right after this.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Well, the world did not end this week, as the South African pastor predicted. Joshua McKellar said that the rapture would occur on September 23rd. To prepare, some people even sold their homes and quit their jobs. This is not the first end times prediction that failed to materialize. In 2011, a radio preacher named Harold Camping identified May 21st of that year as when the rapture would occur. More famous was the 88 Reasons the Rapture Would Happen in 1988 book, but it didn't. There was also a rapture panic surrounding Y2K, and back in 1844, a Baptist preacher named William Miller misled so many people the event became known as the Great Disappointment. American Protestants have been particularly interested in end times prophecies. The Left Behind book series from the 90s and early 2000s sold millions. Though its fictionalized account of the end times was described as a contemporary phenomenon, it did not predict a specific day or year. And of course, there was that haunting Larry Norman song from the 1970s, I Wish We'd All Been Ready. Of the various views of the end times that Christians hold, the most well-known is some version of premillennialism. The most popular view of premillennialism is that at a future point, Christ will meet his saints in the air through the rapture before the Antichrist rules the world in a time known as the Great Tribulation. After that, Jesus will return again to rule for 1,000 years before the final judgment. Another view is preterism, which understands that much of the prophesied happenings of Scripture that many people perceive to be of the end times happened during the first century. According to amillennialism, the millennial reign of Christ and the tribulation aren't specific periods of time, but rather representations of the rule of Christ through his church and the oppressions of evil that occur across history. Postmillennialism holds that Christ will return once the world has been fully evangelized. And of course, within each of these views, there are a number of variations. My view is panmillennialism. It's all going to pan out in the end. Yes, I realize that's a terrible joke, and you have to go to seminary in order to use that joke. Eschatology is fascinating, and while Jesus stated plainly that no one could know the day and hour of his return, he was crystal clear that he will return. And in Revelation, Jesus is recorded as announcing, "Behold, I am making all things new." In other words, the Bible's focus when it comes to eschatology is not so much the when or the how. It's that he's returning. And then the so what. That he is returning should be a great source of hope and joy and comfort for us. Paul described the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior Jesus Christ as the blessed hope in his letter to Titus. In 1 Thessalonians 4, a passage many think describes the rapture, Paul instructed that we should comfort one another with these words. In other words, if the end of days and the return of Christ is a source of fear, you're doing it wrong. In the same way, if end times talks drives you to inaction, passivity, and disengagement from the world around us, you're doing it wrong. A passage that best summarizes what we can be sure of about both the present and the future is John 16:33, where Jesus said, "I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." If our eschatology leaves us in fear or leads us to withdraw from our calling to be salt and light in the world, we are doing eschatology wrong. The prophecies of Scripture do not warn believers to hide in their basement or to flee into the wilderness. They're words of comfort that Christ is returning, that he's the Lord of heaven and earth, that he is making all things new. And because of who he is and what he's going to do, we can live as we ought in light of a story that's bigger than this moment. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
Thank you, John. Let's take it outside. Mr. Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life weather forecast for this afternoon. Clouds, intervals of sun, brief shower in spots, high temperatures in the 70s. For tonight, partly cloudy, patchy late night fog, low temps, upper 40s, 50s. Tomorrow, Intervals of clouds and sunshine with a high temperature in the 70s and a sunny day on Sunday with a high temperature in the 70s to near 80.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much. It is Friday, folks, the 26th of September, and you're listening to the Noon Report on Family Life. This is Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are, as always, Jason McGuire with New York Families and Michael Geer at the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Michael, I know it was a big week for you, that March for Life back on Monday, and we'll get to that in a minute. But first, I want to talk gun control. The House this week voted 4 bills out of committee that had to deal with that issue. I wonder why gun control is their priority right now and not addressing this 3-month late state budget. What say you?
Well, it was the House Democrats that were running this legislation. There were 4 bills that came up for committee vote on Monday. Interestingly, that committee vote was scheduled kind of in a surprise fashion to keep some of the Republican legislators from actually standing on the stage at the March for Life. They scheduled it at the exact same time as the rally. And so there's some politics going on with that. But ultimately, gun control legislation, at least what was proposed by these House Democrats, is not going anywhere in the Pennsylvania legislature. There's opposition in the Senate. There's still opposition in the House, and many of them are not really popular. So I think it's being done more to make a political statement for the supporters of the progressive Democrats in the House.
Yeah. Pressure is mounting on Governor Hochul in New York, Jason, to do more to stamp out crime. She got peppered with questions at the Tonawanda Police Department this week on bail reform. I know she's promised to reform the reforms, but she seems to be taking a wait-and-see approach here. Why is that?
Well, I think she's weighing the political calculus. The electorate is concerned about crime in New York, and that is going to be a major campaign issue in 2026 when the governor is up for re-election. In fact, it was damaging to her in her last election, and it's still dogging her. However, she is facing a legislature who is reticent to make any changes to the bail reform laws, and so it is putting the governor in a difficult position that she cannot overpromise what she cannot move to the legislature.
Yeah, Michael, you mentioned the March for Life back on Monday. What a crowd. I was able to go online and see some of the pictures, and it was just amazing to see how many people. You had mentioned that this is not just the largest rally in Harrisburg, it's the largest state-led pro-life march in the country. How is the pro-life message making inroads across the Commonwealth and across the country?
It was really an exciting crowd. We had over 75 buses come from all over the Commonwealth, including many listeners who listen to this broadcast, and it was great to have all of them join us there. The pro-life message is really resonating in Pennsylvania in so many ways, but we have obstacles to overcome, not the least of which is a very pro-abortion governor in Josh Shapiro. But the message that came forth from the audience, the message that came forth from the stage and of the marchers is that life is precious and that every human life should be protected from conception till natural death. We're going to continue to fight for that. It has been a long battle and will continue to be, but we see many inroads being made in these days.
Yeah, Jason, I know you shared your vision before about how your dream is to see New York become a pro-life state. You said that for a long time. New York, a pro-life state, many would say that's an oxymoron. Certainly won't happen unless there's a fundamental power shift in Albany. Why is one-party rule so hard to break in New York State?
Well, if you look at the voter enrollment advantages that the Democrats have in New York, there are many more Democrats than Republicans and independents, and there are more independents registered than Republicans. And so it is challenging to have a strong two-party system at the state level when the Republicans are vastly outnumbered in that voter enrollment. But ultimately, the problem with where we are as a pro-life state, or if we're not a pro-life state, is a matter of a spiritual problem, not a political one. And so when the church begins to really return to their first love in Jesus Christ and recognizes the importance of pro-life values, when that spreads through the culture, we'll see that reflected in this politics as well.
Yeah. Along those lines, I want to talk about the Charlie Kirk effect on the church. His funeral back on Sunday in Arizona, just amazing. 5.5-hour revival service. I know there was politics in there as well, but for the most part, it was all about Jesus. Michael, I wonder, is this just a flash in the pan, or do you see something real here? And how does the church in Pennsylvania need to get ready for this if it is something real?
I think it is real. I noticed it in my own church the last 2 Sundays, much more crowded. But also a famous writer, well-known writer in Western Pennsylvania, Selena Zito, wrote about churches that were packed to the gills there in the Pittsburgh area. And we're seeing it all over the Commonwealth. And I don't think it's just going to be a flash in the pan. But churches do need to recognize that the benefit of having these pews filled is to start speaking about the truth, as Jason just talked about.
Yeah, I loved what Frank Turek said at the memorial service, Jason, that Charlie Kirk is not in heaven because of what he did for Jesus. It's what Jesus did for him on the cross. And there were so many professions of faith just in that service. How does New York need to get ready, and the churches across New York need to get ready for this revival that seems to be happening? And I've seen it too in the church I attend. It was standing room only the past 2 Sundays.
Yeah, we often say courage begets courage, and I think what happened is people saw the courage of Charlie Kirk, and they are being challenged to do more themselves. And I think there's a lesson for the church there in that Charlie Kirk spoke very boldly for those basic biblical issues of the day. We think about life and human sexuality and all of the issues that maybe we're a little reticent to press into with gender identity and so many other things. But Charlie spoke very clearly to those things. And so the argument that you cannot speak clearly to the cultural and social issues of the day and still preach the gospel was kind of, just debunked through Charlie Kirk, because he really brought those two things together, and that kind of courage is what is drawing a younger generation towards his message. I'll also just quickly say that in 1956, there was a missionary. In fact, there were 5 missionaries that were killed in Ecuador. They were there to minister to the Auca Indians there. And as a result of that, there was a missionary surge that occurred following that. Many are aware of Elizabeth Elliot. Well, her husband was killed as one of those missionaries there. My wife turned to me during the services for Charlie Kirk and said, I wonder if there will be an effect in this generation like there was when Steve Saint and others were killed there. And I think we'll see that. Maybe there will be some social, cultural, political missionaries that will go out with the gospel of Jesus Christ into the public marketplace of ideas because of what is experienced.
I love your thinking there, Jason. Michael, one of the things that Erica Kirk and that speech, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's so powerful. One of the things she said at her husband's memorial was just talked about how much Charlie wanted to restore the biblical definition of manhood in our culture. Do you think that the social experiment known as transgender indoctrination, do you think that will lose its appeal as a result of the life testimony of Charlie Kirk?
I do, and I think, Charlie and Erica both talked about God's creation order, about the notion of getting married and having children as being something that grants you great fulfillment. Charlie spoke about it quite a bit. And in a society that is looking for answers, looking for purpose, and young people who are being skewed astray by TikTok and other things to tell them that you maybe were born in the wrong body, I think turning to how God created them and embracing that notion and then this creation order that God has made for us to flourish and to prosper, I think that the message is going to go forth in a stronger way than it has in recent decades.
Yeah. Jason, you've talked so much on this program about the harm that can come as a result of this lie that's being perpetuated by our culture that you can change your gender like you change your socks. I will ask you that same question. Where does this social experiment go if the trajectory of transgender indoctrination does not change? If that does not change, where does this conversation go next?
Well, Carl Trueman has spent quite a bit of time talking about this issue in a lot of his writings, and he looks at it from really the theological but also the anthropological approach to this. And if we don't have a better understanding of what it is to be human, well, then everything else unravels and falls apart. Thankfully, I think it is unraveling. We're starting to see it happen, and I think that we will see a turn back from some of these things in the years to come.
All right. Well, great conversation today, guys. And if people have questions about any of the topics discussed on the program, or they simply want to learn more about the Pennsylvania Family Institute, Michael, where can they find you online?
PAFamily.org.
And stay informed on all the issues in New York as well. Jason has a wonderful ministry called New York Families. Where can folks learn more about you, Jay?
NewYorkFamilies.org.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. Capital Connection comes your way every Friday during the Noon Report. You can also find it online anytime at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or our website, familylife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. The front that's brought the recent showers and thunderstorms is slowly moving off the Atlantic coast, and that will allow drier air to partially clear the skies today. Another front will come in tomorrow. It's weaker, drier, but it might produce some cloud coverage. In its wake, high pressure spells a beautifully sunny day on Sunday. In forecast form for this afternoon, clouds, intervals of sun, brief shower in spots, high temperatures in the 70s. For tonight, partly cloudy, patchy late night fog, low temps, upper 40s and 50s. Tomorrow, intervals of clouds and sunshine with a high temperature in the 70s and a sunny day on Sunday with a high temperature in the 70s to near 80.
Okay, Kevin, thank you very much. Finally, at noon, call them hot cakes, griddle cakes, or Johnny cakes. They also go by blintzes, flapjacks, and drop scones. Whatever you call them, it's never a bad idea to enjoy a delicious stack of pancakes. Here's Family Life's Brian Query.
Get those hotcakes on the griddle. It's time to prepare some flapjacks because it's National Pancake Day. Now, you might be saying, didn't we already celebrate this holiday this year? And you would be right. Two different groups started their own versions of the holiday, and most national holiday calendars recognize both. Pancakes are a breakfast staple dating back to ancient Greece. A few facts about pancakes. 93% of Americans say they like or love pancakes. Our favorite type of pancakes is buttermilk, and 2/3 of those surveyed prefer maple syrup as their topping of choice. So today, if you're flip-flopping on what type of pancake you prefer, whether thick or thin, made on a griddle or baked in the oven, for breakfast or for dinner, celebrate with some pancakes. It just helps prove this day stacks up against the rest. Brian Query, Family Life News.
All right, love me some flapjacks. Thank you, Brian. And that's our world, the world we live in. Friday, September 26th. Have a wonderful weekend. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.